Okay, thanks a lot for coming to this humanitarian OpenStreetMap mapping party. It's a mapping party that is organized in conjunction with, it's organized by my department, that is the DIST department at PoliTo+UniTo di Torino, together with Ithaca, that is a non-profit association connected with PoliTo+UniTo di Torino, and the HOT, that stands for Humanitarian OpenStreetMap Team, that is represented also by the colleagues Cristiano, Giovando, and sorry, I forgot the name of your colleague, from Becky Candy, that will support us during this session also for the practical part. Cristiano and Becky will take the lead in the second part for a specific presentation dealing with HOT, but first a quick introduction from my side. First of all, a general information. So coming here, you implicitly agree on the fact that PoliTo+UniTo di Torino may use images or photographs or any other media taken in this room for any, let's say, activities related, purposes related to this event. So you have the link for the additional condition related to this privacy settings, but be aware of this situation, and obviously you're even free to leave the room if you do not agree with this policy. Okay, this is an event in the framework of a bigger event that is called DISTFest. It is a cycle of events designed to focus on topics, challenges, people, and ideas of the contemporary debate on the relationship between ecological transition, sustainable development, society, and environment. So my department organized this cycle of events. We are almost at the end of the month. That means that we are also almost at the end of the events. Nevertheless, I will then circulate this slide with you all. You have the link for the future events, and also some of them has been recorded, so you are able eventually to attend to recover some of those events that you weren't able to be present to. This is a specific event, is a mapping party. Why a mapping party? Because each year disaster around the world kill nearly 100,000 people and affect or displace 200 million people. And mapping, knowing the knowledge of the territory, can somehow have an impact in preventing and changing the situation. Who are the three entities involved in this mapping party? More or less, I already introduced that. First of all, the Inter-University Department of Regional and Urban Studies and Planning, so the DIST department of the PoliTo+UniTo di Torino. Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team that will be presented in detail later, but it's an international team dedicated to humanitarian action and community development through open mapping based on OpenStreetMap. This concept of OpenStreetMap is the basis of this activity and will be treated with additional details. While finally, Ithaca is a non-profit association dealing especially with data acquisition, management, and elaboration for emergency responses purposes in primis. Mapping parties is not, this is not the first of such event, at least in this area. Then over the world, there are a lot of mapping parties running almost every day. But just to stay in that context, so in the area of Torino, traditionally, again, Ithaca, PoliTo+UniTo di Torino, and 5T, that is a company controlled by the municipality of Torino. Together, we have organized 4 mapping parties in the past. Those are a little bit different from the one that we are approaching today, because are so-called proximity events. So events that are dealing with data acquisition in the surrounding area, in the area that you know well and where you can move around in order to gather new information. While today we will focus on mapping on areas that are completely on the other side of the world. So 2 different approaches of mapping parties, but with the general idea of generating new content, new information, new territorial information. Just to mention that a few months ago, the same group, together with some of the attendees, and namely Professor Giovando, we organized a PoliTo mapping party devoted to, let's say, to try to involve especially the students of the Polytechnic di Torino. And why this? Because internationally there is this organization that is called Youth Mappers, that it's a network of more than 5,000 universities distributed in 62 countries, that create this network of mappers within university and so on. It's a network for exchanges idea, project resources, and also an occasion for having small grants. So the general idea for us in organizing these mapping parties for students is both the general purpose of increasing the knowledge of OpenStreetMap, in general open mapping initiative, but also considering that there is this opportunity to create a sort of student group within the Politecnico di Torino devoted to those activities. So that's just to for your information. Obviously, not the whole audience probably is a student from Politecnico di Torino, but in case that could be nevertheless relevant. Why we are dealing with those initiatives? Those initiatives that are can be framed under the umbrella of volunteer geographic information, because this kind of information, this kind of technology, environment, systems, has the purpose to create, assemble, and disseminate geographical data provided voluntarily by individuals. Okay, so individuals like us, with no specific connection to any company, any specific reason for, let's say, making money about something, even if we will see later on that this is partially true, can decide to contribute to those environment, to those infrastructure, such as OpenStreetMap and Wikimedia, that are 2 of the major possible, let's say, solution for contributing with this kind of information. Be careful, because OpenStreetMap and Wikimedia are not the same, not only in the terms of content, but also in terms of licensing conditions. And this is obviously, and we'll see later on, it's an important factor. Clearly, volunteers are somehow more engaged in particular situation. And what you see in the slide is a classical example. It's the increase of the number of buildings present in the area of Port-au-Prince, so the capital of Haiti, after specific events, such as the earthquake in 2010 and the Hurricane Matthews in 2017. So these kind of events tend to, let's say, involve more and more volunteers in contributing to those kind of infrastructure. This is so-called humanitarian contribution to those solutions. Let's keep for a moment Wikimedia, and the reason substantially is within these aspects, so the licensing condition, but I leave to you to investigate better. But nevertheless, OpenStreetMap is by far a solution that is more open to different usage. But what is OpenStreetMap? Its definition is that it's a free editable map of the whole world that was created completely from scratch by volunteers. It was initiated by Steve Post in 2004, that actually was a researcher in a university that needed for his studies knowledge of the campus of the university, and he had no data. So he started with this initiative that was aimed to map a part of a campus of a university in UK, and now has become a database of the whole world. One of the key factors, again, are the licensing conditions connected to those datasets. And the licensing conditions are mainly summarized here. So within OpenStreetMap, you are free to share, create, and to adapt. Everything is contained, as long as you attribute the information, so mention OpenStreetMap contributors as the source of the data, share alike the content of the database, so you cannot make a copy of the OpenStreetMap database and decide to sell it, and keep it open again, the database itself. But also this share alike is only related to the data. So it's still possible to create services, application that creates some sort of game that can be commercial application on top of OpenStreetMap. The only limitation is that you cannot decide to sell the data itself, but the services built up on top of OpenStreetMap can be sold. Okay, the more important aspect that is that you have to credit the usage of OpenStreetMap, and that's why in almost all web application that has OpenStreetMap as a background, you can find normally this copyright OpenStreetMap contributors appearing. Why OpenStreetMap has had so much success? More or less is related to both social and economic and technological factors. The social economic factors are related to the fact that in several areas of the world, data were absolutely not available, or in other parts of the world were available, but under stringent licensing conditions that actually made the data not usable for many different purposes. From the technological point of view, obviously the Internet and Web 2.0 diffusion had an impact, together with the penetration of GNSS, also known as GPS devices, and also the availability of high and very high resolution imagery, because we see that one of the possible contributions to OpenStreetMap is digitizing over satellite imagery. How OpenStreetMap is conceived is basically built on top of three elements that are nodes, ways, and relations. And those are the physical elements. So the geographical component of the OpenStreetMap data model. Plus, associated to all geographical entities, you have one or more associated tags that gave the semantic content to the specific geometric feature. So you have a point, plus you have a tag saying that this point is, for example, a city or a well or a pole or something less. You have a way that is a line, and you have a tag saying that this line is a road, is a river or something else, and etc. And we have relations that we exploit a little bit later on. This is a very short schema of how are the relations between objects, but we skip for the moment. So again, the basic geometric feature within OpenStreetMap is the node. That is a specific point over the Earth surface defined by its latitude and longitude. And is obviously used either for standalone point feature, for example, a park bench, a water well, or defining the shape of a way, in the sense that a way is an ordered list of nodes from 2 minimum, because you need the 2 points in order to uniquely identify a way, a line, up to 2000. Why 2000? Because it's let's say a limitation of the software. So with line, you can identify linear feature like rivers and road, but also boundaries. It's implicit the fact that within ways you can include also polygons, because a polygon is a polyline where the first node and the last node are coincident. What are relations? Relation is a structure within the data model that allows to put in relation different geometrical entities. It can be used for example, combining a set of ways in order to mention that all the set of ways represent a specific motorway, or a cycling route, or a bus route, considering that the single way can be both a part of a specific named road, but also a cycle route and also by a bus route. So it's a way, it's a relation one-to-many, because a single object can be part of many relationships. Relations are also managed, for example, to specify restriction in a road network. Restriction are those indications that say to you if you are allowed to turn left or right, and it's very useful when you plan your travel. And relations are also used to manage the, let's say, multi-polygon. One of classical example is managing so-called donut polygons. So polygons that has holes inside, and these holes may be other things. Classical example, a lake with an island, and the island itself has a lake inside. You have this combination of elements, and the relation between the object can be used in order to manage these apparently complex situations. This again is a very simple sketch, not really simple, but a complete sketch of the geometric element within OpenStreetMap. So basically you have nodes that are the basis for everything, and if you have 2 or more nodes connected, you have a way, and the closed way becomes a polygon. And then with the relationship, you can manage routes, multi-polygons, and other more complex entities. This is for the geometrical part. Then you have to add the semantic content. So I have a point, a node, I have a way, I have a relation, I have to describe what is this point, this way, this relation. And the way OpenStreetMap perform this action is by using the tagging. So tags are a combination of keys and values that describe uniquely the characteristics of a specific feature. The the characteristics of OpenStreetMap that there is no fixed dictionary related to that. You have indication, you have documentation that mention to you which are the allowed combination of tags, key and values to be associated to the different aspects. And this is contained in that document map features. It's a very long page, a web page, where you have all the admitted combination approved by the community that uses OpenStreetMap. So the important thing is that OpenStreetMap is not an app, but is a database. And being a database, you can decide to represent it in many different ways. So the data are always the same. You decide to give priority to certain topics instead of others. For example, you can depict a specific portion, geographical portion of OpenStreetMap for humanitarian purposes. It means you gave focus on places where that can generate a gathering of people, etc. It's a database. That means that it enables a vast number of services in many different domains. Here you have a slide with a very limited list of applications that are using OpenStreetMap data for many different purposes, from e-bike charging station to more twisty roads for the passionate of motorbikes, for finding your favorite beers in town, etc. So many different applications that exploit OpenStreetMap in many different domains. It's something that is continuously updated. So almost 8 million registered users as of 2 days ago. More than 7 million nodes present in the database, and more than 4.5 million map changes per day, and 1.6 million of different user contributors. And you have even ways to monitor in real time this situation. So there are applications that are showing what is happening right now. So change set means a set of change performed by a single user. This is a real-time situation. So the user Salusoft added a file migrant somewhere in the world. This is real-time. So any second, there are several changes performed within OpenStreetMap. Yeah, even other way to monitor the situation, something like that, where it's another application showing more or less the same thing, and basically the map that initially is centered on UK, London, for the reason that Steve Coast started here, and then moves to a specific region in the world where a specific change or a specific editing has been just made. Those are a couple of applications that are very effective in demonstrating that is really a live database that is changing almost every second, and while you are looking to this presentation. So again, OpenStreetMap is a completely open database that you must share with the same level of let's say licensing. So the data itself must remain open, but the application that you can build on top of those data can be commercial. So here on this slide, you see several, even very large companies that are using OpenStreetMap for their services, including Politecnico di Torino, that since few years decided to change for these background services, switch from Google to OpenStreetMap due for licensing condition. Is that right, Francesco? Can you confirm? Okay. But obviously, OpenStreetMap is used also by the humanitarian sector with different initiatives, what we'll see later on, but there are also other initiatives like missing maps, LearnOSM, that are dealing with the use of OpenStreetMap within the humanitarian context, and also Youth Mapper that was already mentioned earlier. Okay, this was a relatively quick introduction to OpenStreetMap and the characteristics and the general usage. Then, if okay with Cristiano, we'll give the floor to him for an introduction, a more specific introduction of what is of OpenStreetMap, the humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, what it does, and also introduce maybe the purpose of the mapping phase that we have later on. So Cristiano, if it's okay, the floor is yours. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Andrea, thank you. Can you just give me 1 minute, because we went over a little bit with the time. I just need 1 minute to set something, and then I'll be right back and I'll take it over from here.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So the basic idea for today is, after this introduction by Cristiano over the activities on HOT, we will move over the tables, maybe splitting in groups, and we select a specific region and a specific project, and we start contributing to OpenStreetMap for a specific activity. We see that there are projects requested by international organizations for mapping activity over the world in for specific prevention activities, or for specific actions like managing the distribution of vaccines over remote areas where you don't even know exactly where a single village is located. And those are examples of the need for international organization, for volunteers that look at satellite imagery and acquire information over the ground for specific topics. So this will be the second part of this activity. Cristiano, feel free to interrupt me whenever you are ready. Otherwise, I only show a couple of things of the presentation. So I'm in the presentation of the event. Also, MapSwipe was mentioned. What is MapSwipe? Is basically an application that you can install in your mobile devices, and is conceived to identify, if very simply, if a feature is present on the ground or not. This is the basic functionality. So the application displays on the screen some squares, and by tapping on the screen, you identify if on the specific area you find buildings, roads, rivers, and so on, according to the task that is required to you. Then those functionality will be extended, for example, in identifying if already acquired building has been made by volunteers or made by means of artificial intelligence are accurate enough, or the last case to identify changes. So what's was present pre of the event and post of the event. Classical example in an earthquake, to see if the building was destroyed by the earthquake or not. And this is a very simple application. So you can download it, you can you look to a specific tutorial, then you have a specific portion normally acquired by satellite on your screen, and with a single tap on the image, you mentioned that there is at least one building with that portion. With 2 clicks, it means that maybe there are buildings in that specific area. With 3 clicks, you will say that the image is not suitable for making this interpretation. And why this application is useful? Because it can be used to set a specific project within the task manager that I think will be part of the presentation of Cristiano. Okay?
Yeah.
So I would say that I stop the sharing and leave the floor to Cristiano.
Thank you, Andrea, and sorry for the quick break here, but I was supposed to leave at the half hour, but now I should be able to stay longer. I arranged things different. No worries. No worries. Okay, let me share my screen. And by the way, you already covered a lot of the things that we were also going to talk about on OpenStreetMap, so I think we can also skip some of that. Let me just share my screen. Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining today. As Andrea was saying, my name is Cristiano Giovando. I think you can all see my screen. Do you see my screen? Just to,
yeah.
Zoom doesn't. Okay. I've been with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team for over 5 years now, but I'm actually have been a volunteer for the organization for longer, since the first activation in 2010 for the Haiti earthquake. So it's been a long journey so far, and HOT has grown from a small volunteer organization that was not even incorporated to a full NGO that works in many different countries, that is now scaling up operations also through regional hubs, and has volunteers and staff all over the world. And today, for the next 15 minutes, because she also has to run to another meeting in 15 minutes, is Becky from Kampala, or from Uganda, and she's been with HOT for some time now. Becky, do you want to just do a quick intro, just for yourself and your role with HOT?
Sure.
Just say hi.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining it. My name is Rebecca Chandiru, preferably Becky. I've been working with HOT since 2018. As apparently I'm working with HOT as a mapping validator with a partnership team. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Becky. Yeah, so let's go back to some slides that we had for today. And before we get into the Mapathon, just a quick introduction to HOT. Andrea already mentioned about the organization, the goals, but the whole Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, as the name says, is founded around OpenStreetMap, and there are 3 main areas that we work on: disaster risk reduction and response, sustainable development, and technology. The technology part is that part of HOT that mostly I work on. I'm part of the tech team within HOT. We develop the tools that we are going to use tonight. The tasking manager, for example. We contribute also to some of the other tools that are used for data collection and for editing in OpenStreetMap. And as Andrea was saying, yes.
Just to mention that your presentation is not in full screen mode.
That's right. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I think most of you are familiar or already heard of OpenStreetMap. It's a collaborative project, as Andrea was saying, started in 2004 and has been used for humanitarian response since 2010. Some applications also a little bit earlier. As you can see, it's a map, but behind the map, it's a data. So as Andrea was saying correctly, it's a database. And most importantly, the data that it's created, it's accessible. So released under an open license and everyone can use it for different applications. And we'll see one in particular. We already mentioned the collaboration with humanitarian organizations on the ground and with volunteers online. Anyone, as we are going to do tonight, can add to the map by tracing imagery that is made available through the tools, and a specific coordinating tool called the tasking manager. You might all be familiar with tracing or mapping from aerial imagery, where you have an image and then you use editing tools to trace roads, buildings, and so on. And the two aspects of the work that HOT does is the data that we create through remote mapping. So by tracing aerial imagery, it could be satellite, it could be drone imagery, and then the data that is contributed from the ground. So we have teams on the ground, but especially we work with the community to empower them and be able to add the data themselves and keep it updated. And that is really what makes the data rich and up to date. Only if there's that community behind that can provide all the additional information, because tracing the aerial imagery, you create roads, so there are lines or buildings that are squares or different shapes, but then you would need the knowledge from the ground to know the name of the school or the name of the road, and so that's a very critical, important part of OSM. I'm gonna switch back to the other presentation, and I just want to mention about missing maps, and then quickly I want to get to the project that we'll be working on tonight, and I want to leave a few minutes for Becky to do a quick intro and guide you through the steps before she has to leave. But Missing Maps is a initiative that started 5 years ago, and HOT is one of the founders. Here's a website that you can go to, missingmaps.org. There's a video, but the objective of, and sorry that I'm just switching between slides here. The goal is to map areas where people live at risk of disasters or crisis. So it's mapping before disaster happens. So we know that some areas are at risk, and we know that maps are missing in those areas, from the name Missing Maps. And so through a process of mapping, remote validation, and field validation, we can create a map that then it's used by communities on the ground, disaster risk management organizations and experts, and all that data can be used to better prepare and respond to disaster and crisis. So I'll leave it to Becky for a quick overview of the project, and then if she has time to guide you through the first steps of setting up the account on OSM, and then also the task manager, and then I can take over, and for any questions or any additional information about HOT, I can continue after that, if that's okay.
Sure, thank you so much, Cristiano. So about the Guatemala project that we are going to do, So the paths of the hurricanes Eti and Lato did not directly touch the territories of Guatemala, but resulted in intense tropical storms that impacted most of the Guatemalan territories in November 2020. So the heavy rains that caused the catastrophic floods, the landslides, the mud flows that mainly affected the rural areas with high levels of extreme poverty. So the populations are still suffering the effects of that disaster to this day. So this remote mapping that we are going to do today will support the identification and to categorize of the settlements, as well as impactation of the planned activities, and largely in generation of the data for humanitarian activities and risk prevention and management in the identified provinces. So we are going to all contribute so that that data can be used to manage the data to help in decision making and proper resource application. Yeah. So I am going to go directly. If you could permit me share my screen.
Yep, go ahead.
I want to go direct. Okay, thank you. I want to share Chrome just, where is it? Yes. Okay, I think Chrome, yes. So I'm going to share, I don't know if, is there anyone who is familiar with the tasking manager or has an account with the tasking manager? If I can get a yes in the chat, it would be awesome. I'm just sharing the link in the chat for you to go there. If you do not have an account with OSM, that's still awesome. I'm going to walk you through on how to create an account with OSM. Just share the link. Okay. So if you do not have an account with OSM, it's okay. You can just click on that link and it will get you here. Then you put your Gmail, your email, you write your email again. Then the OSM, the display name is the name, like your OSM username that you'd like, and then you submit. You put your preferred password that you like, then you confirm it right here, and then you'll be able to sign up. Yeah. Can I get like a yes in the chat if any of you has signed up?
Yeah, Becky, just to mention that the requirement of filling up the registration, the user ID within OpenStreetMap was included in the original instructions.
Awesome.
General,
so everyone, okay.
Yeah, in general, everyone should have already done this. Thank you.
Very good, very good. So I'm going to paste the project that we are going to work on. Just a minute.
And if you are in the task manager already, which you can reach by typing tasks.hotosm.org, then you can also search by project number, which is 11672. Right, Becky?
Yes, yes. Okay. I want to paste the number. I don't know why it is doing it, acting up like that. Okay. I'm just going to paste this link in the chat, which will help you go there directly. Okay. So that is the project that we are working on. So just so you know, you have to make sure that you have signed in right here. If you haven't, you please put in your OSM username and your OSM password, the correct one, and this is what you'll see. So this is how the tasking manager looks like once you click on that link shared. So right here, it's like a description of the project. And then down here, you have teams and permissions. So here it will show you who is supposed to map and who is supposed to validate, and the teams that are supposed to validate involved in this project. And then another interesting thing here is that you can actually communicate to the project manager. How? you just type in here your complaint, just in case the imagery of the project is not suitable, or you think there is some way that the project manager can help to to improve the project. And then now down here are the stats. And then you go ahead here and say contribute. On contribute, the most important thing here is the task, the instructions, and the contributions. So on tasks, it will show you the people that have currently touched on this project, that are recent people. Instructions, you can read the instruction, the type of the imagery, the special notes you're supposed to take during mapping. And then here you will see a dashboard of the different people that have contributed on that project. And then, yes, then maybe another thing that I did not mention earlier on before I go there is how do you actually, when you reach the tasking manager, how do you actually get a project to use? So you can filter the project depending on what you want. For example, on the difficulty, if you're a beginner mapper, you're advised to work on beginner mappers project. So you select like this, and then you can also filter out by urgency. Like, is it very urgently needed? Active projects, new projects, old projects, the same. And then you can as well just paste in the number, the project ID number right here. Like for example, the one we were working on is it 100? What? Could you please read for me that number?
11670.
11670, yeah? 72. So when you put the number there, it will directly take you to the project and you'll be able to like start mapping. So once it comes to this point, you have to click on contribute. On contribute, yes. And then maybe one important thing before I go is the legend. So this legend is very important. That helps you to know the status of the project. For example, white means project is ready for mapping. Red, rather this light blue, it's ready for validation. And then brown, it's like it has been invalidated, more mapping is required. And then this green means it has been completely cleaned up. Then unavailable for mapping, this light gray, usually when there's a dark cloud, if you try to switch different imageries and you cannot map, there is a dark cloud. And then priority area, sometimes the project managers want us like to start validation in a specific area, so they mark it like this. And then when I select a project, it will lock it, it puts a padlock. Yeah, I think I have to go now. I might come back. I don't know if I'll get you.
Yeah.
All right.
No worries. Thank you, Becky.
Sorry, I had to leave.
I'll take it from here.
Awesome.
Yeah, let me actually open the project here on my screen. Okay. Yeah, as Becky was saying, just try to move. There's a lot of instructions that you can read, and for many projects, these instructions are similar, especially those that require mapping buildings or roads, and especially in the same area. But it is important to read them to understand, yeah, what is the imagery to be used. And by imagery, it's the layer available within the editor that we're going to see now. So there are different sources of imagery that are available for mapping, and we'll see those. Existing mapping does not match imagery. This is the case when there's already some data present in the area that we're mapping. And for example, the imagery that we are using might not be matching exactly because it's shifted by a certain amount because of the resolution. So if it's a satellite image, there might be some inaccuracies of up to a few meters. And so you might see that the imagery doesn't match exactly. So there are several ways that you can work around this, but I believe in this project there will not be much existing data. And then some alternative imagery we can see in case there's clouds or shadows or things like that. We can look at some other imagery. The required task in this project, it's a beginner project, is to map buildings. As Andrea was saying, there's a lot of different type of features in OpenStreetMap. If you browse through the wiki, I think it's wiki.openstreetmap.org, you can have a good overview of all the features that you can find. But in this case, we're just mapping buildings, which are closed polygons or closed lines that create a polygon. And I'll show you how to do it in the editor. And it's not required to map roads and paths, but if you have any experience with OpenStreetMap and you feel confident that you can do that, then you're welcome as well to do it. But again, it's not required as part of the project. Some general notes that are valid for any mapping task or project. Try to be as precise as possible, or you will see now in the imagery that you might need to zoom in to a certain zoom level to see the details of the building, to make sure that you outline it properly. And for example, if it's a square building where you have square corners, try to follow that so that it's a nice product also in terms of cartographic rendering. Every time that you save your session, so after you map one of these tasks, you're asked to provide some comments. And so there's some default comments that are inserted, like related to the project, but then you can also add specific comments that you might have for that specific task. If there's a lot of buildings in one square, you can also decide to split it. And I don't think we're gonna have this problem here, but that's what this is referring to. Personal knowledge, we don't have, I don't think, much in this case, but if anyone is familiar with the area, that is always good to, add information about the building names, cell facilities, and so on. And if you have to stop mapping for any reason, you can, and you haven't finished your task here, that is fine, completely fine. You just save, but don't mark the task as finished, because someone else will pick it up.